My name is Delilah Foster, and I am 33 years old. Just 21 days ago, during the toast at my parents' ruby wedding anniversary, they made a grand announcement to our 30 assembled guests. We are thrilled to share that we are taking the entire family on a luxurious getaway to the Bahamas next week for a second celebration. My dad beamed. The dining room erupted in applause. My younger sister squealed with absolute delight. I found myself grinning from ear to ear, already picturing the warm island sun and the salty Caribbean breeze. It was going to be my very first actual vacation in years. Then, I made the catastrophic error of asking one basic question. What time is our flight? My father stared at me as if I had just sprouted a second head. The warm smile on my mother's face instantly hardened into a tight line. And right there, in front of 36 of their closest friends, my dad cleared his throat and said, "You do not need to worry about the flight details, Delilah. You are not coming on this trip. Somebody needs to stay behind and watch the kids." 30 pairs of eyes darted toward me. 30 people sat in dead silence, witnessing the exact second my family publicly confirmed that I was not actually considered a member of the family at all. But there was a massive piece of the puzzle they were completely oblivious to. I had a secret, a hidden life I had been quietly cultivating for 4 entire years. And as I stood humiliated in that dining room, I realized it was finally time to unleash it. Before I dive into the absolute chaos of what unfolded next, please take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely connect with stories about breaking toxic family cycles. Also, drop a comment down below letting me know where in the world you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, to truly comprehend why I walked away from every single thing I had ever known, I need to rewind the clock and show you how this all started. The Foster family resides in a pristine, white colonial-style home in an upscale Boston suburb. It boasts 5 bedrooms, a massive 3-car garage, and landscaping manicured to absolute HOA perfection. It is the exact type of property designed to scream, "Look at how successful we are," to anyone passing by. My dad, Harold Foster, is a retired regional bank manager who stepped down 4 years ago. My mom, Patricia, has never held a paying job for a single day in her life, yet she will fiercely argue that she operates on the schedule of a Fortune 500 CEO. She chairs the local church women's auxiliary, runs endless neighborhood charity drives, and is utterly obsessed with maintaining what she calls the Foster family reputation. And then there is the golden child, my sister, Natalie. 3 years my junior, she is married to a corporate lawyer named Spencer Hartley, who works at a prestigious downtown firm. Natalie miraculously finds a way to shoehorn Spencer's job title into literally every conversation she has. They share 3 children, a 7-year-old boy named Ethan, a 5-year-old girl named Olivia, and a 2-year-old toddler named Benjamin, along with a gleaming new Range Rover that is perpetually granted the absolute best parking space in my parents' driveway. My vehicle? A battered, 12-year-old Honda Civic. It is permanently banished to the street. "Delilah, go move your car," my mom would immediately snap whenever I came over for a visit. Spencer is bringing the Range Rover, and you know our guests always judge the house by what is parked in the driveway. I never once argued. I just grabbed my keys and moved the Honda. That is the insidious nature of being the invisible scapegoat in your own family. Eventually, you become completely numb to the million tiny ways they signal your worthlessness. You stop noticing that you never get the good parking spot or that you are always seated at the worst chair at the dining table. You stop caring that your mother eagerly introduces your sister by her husband's lucrative career, while you are simply introduced as Delilah. She helps out around here. For the record, I work as a remote, part-time accountant. I maintain a very flexible schedule and bring in a modest, but comfortable income. It is absolutely nothing that would ever impress the Foster family elite. But what I never, ever shared with them was my true passion. The secret project I launched 4 years prior, right after my personal life imploded. I never told my family that I had finally learned how to truly open my eyes. But first, let me paint a crystal clear picture of what helping out actually looked like in my family. Take Thanksgiving, for example. I would arrive at 5:30 a.m. sharp to begin roasting the turkey. I was tasked with setting the massive dining table using my mother's pristine Wedgwood china, The expensive set I was strictly forbidden from eating off of, only permitted to hand wash. I arranged the floral centerpieces, vigorously polished the antique silverware, and meticulously timed the baking of 8 different side dishes. Natalie, on the other hand, would waltz through the front door at noon draped in a designer cashmere sweater, hand out a few air kisses, and promptly sit down at the table, waiting to be served. Christmas was the exact same exhausting routine, with the added bonus of having to wrap every single present my mother purchased because her arthritis was acting up. Oddly enough, that crippling arthritis never once prevented her from attending her intense bridge club matches 3 times a week. Then came the birthdays for my niece and nephew. I was simultaneously forced to act as the party planner, the main entertainment, the cleanup crew, and the emergency babysitter. Just last year, I spent 10 grueling hours managing Ethan's chaotic dinosaur-themed birthday bash, while Natalie casually slipped out to get a professional manicure because she desperately needed a mental break. The single time I ever dared to ask if I could bow out of a mandatory family gathering because I was facing a severe tax deadline for a client, my mother's voice turned to absolute ice. Family always comes first, Delilah. We all have to make sacrifices. The glaring irony was that I seemed to be the only human being in our bloodline making any sacrifices at all. My emotional breaking point did not arrive in a massive explosion. It crept up on me in a series of tiny, humiliating moments. Like the year Natalie proudly handed me my official Christmas gift, a cheap fabric kitchen apron with the words "World's Best" written in tacky glitter puff paint. She beamed at me as if she had just gifted me a diamond necklace. And like a fool, I wore it. I strapped that apron on every single time I was summoned to their homes to cook, scrub dishes, and wrangle their children. Do you want to know the exact moment the pathetic reality of my existence washed over me? It happened on a random Thursday night while I was furiously scrubbing baked-on grease out of my mom's heavy Le Creuset pot after yet another family dinner. I suddenly realized I genuinely could not recall the last time a single member of my family had invited me to their home just to enjoy my company without handing me a chore. For years ago, my universe completely collapsed. I had been in a committed relationship with a man named Kevin for 5 years. We had actively discussed getting married, buying a house, and raising kids. Then, one random evening, he asked me to sit down on the couch and delivered a sentence that will haunt me forever. "I love you, Delilah, but I just do not think I am in love with you anymore," he sighed. "You are just there. You are always just there. Always just there. Like a lamp. Like a piece of beige wallpaper. Like an old piece of furniture." After he packed his bags and walked out of my life, I found myself aimlessly wandering the streets of downtown Boston until I drifted into a dusty pawn shop. I still do not fully know what drew me inside. Maybe I was just desperately searching for something tangible to fill the gaping void in my chest. That is when I spotted it sitting on a glass shelf, a used but incredibly well-maintained Canon DSLR camera. The price tag read $220. I pulled out my wallet and bought it using funds I really should have put into my savings account. I did not utter a word about it to anyone. That black camera transformed into my absolute sanctuary. I began wandering the city, capturing raw images of the things and people society conditioned us to look right past. I photographed elderly women sitting totally alone at rain-soaked bus stops. I captured the bone-deep exhaustion on the faces of overnight janitorial staff. I zoomed in on the scarred, calloused hands of street food vendors. I documented the people who the world looked right through, the exact same way my family looked right through me. I titled the photography series Unseen. I set up a completely anonymous Instagram profile. I did not post my face. I did not use my real name. I just let the art speak for itself. Over the course of 4 years, that account quietly amassed 15,000 fiercely loyal followers. They were people who saw the world exactly the way I did. People who finally understood. When I was not out shooting, I kept the Canon tightly wrapped in a luxurious old cashmere scarf, hidden in the darkest corner of my bedroom closet. It was the one beautiful thing in my life that I kept entirely for myself. Exactly 3 weeks prior to my parents' Ruby anniversary, I received an email that I very nearly sent straight to my spam folder. It was dispatched from a prestigious gallery located in Santa Barbara, California, called the Coastal Light Gallery. The sender was inquiring if I would be open to a formal discussion regarding my photography portfolio. I sat at my tiny desk and stared blankly at that screen for 20 full minutes before I realized my fingers were violently trembling. But I did not type a response. Not yet. Because in my warped reality, miraculous things like this simply did not happen to invisible people like me. There is exactly one person in my entire bloodline who actually sees me for who I am. Her name is Ruth, and she is my mother's estranged younger sister. In my mother's eyes, Aunt Ruth is the ultimate family disappointment. Ruth never tied the knot. She aggressively shunned corporate life to pursue her deep passion for ceramics. 25 years ago, she packed her bags and relocated to the stunning coastal town of Santa Barbara, California, where she opened a charming little coffee shop with a massive pottery studio attached to the back. My mother has held a bitter grudge about it ever since. Ruth completely flushed her potential down the toilet. My mom would constantly sneer at family functions. She could have secured a respectable life, but she decided she would rather play in the mud. What my mother absolutely did not know was that I had been secretly calling Aunt Ruth every single Sunday evening for 8 straight years. Aunt Ruth was the very first person I ever trusted to view my photography. One night, feeling incredibly vulnerable, I texted her a single image from my collection just to test the waters. Her immediate reply made me break down in tears. "Delilah, this is absolutely extraordinary. You possess a profound gift." Not a single soul had ever attached the word extraordinary to anything I had ever done. Ruth was the driving force who constantly pushed me to keep my finger on the shutter to keep uploading my art. And 3 weeks before the anniversary party, she casually dropped a bombshell that altered the entire trajectory of my life. "Delilah, I really hope I did not overstep," Aunt Ruth said over the phone. "But I actually forwarded your Instagram portfolio to a very close friend of mine. He owns a high-end gallery out here in Santa Barbara. His name is Marcus Coleman, and he is desperately hunting for emerging talent." I almost dropped my cell phone. "Aunt Ruth, that is the exact gallery that just emailed me." "I know, my sweet girl," I could hear the massive smile in her voice. "He called me this morning. He wants to have a serious sit-down with you regarding a solo exhibition." The line went dead silent. My heart was slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. But Aunt Ruth, that is a legitimate, real-world career move." "Yes, Delilah, it absolutely is." Her tone shifted, becoming fierce and protective. "And you have earned it. You do not require a single person's permission to chase the life you actually want to live. I had to learn that lesson far too late in life. You do not have to." That very same night, I sat down at my laptop and fired off a reply to Marcus Coleman. Now, let me drag you back to the infamous night that finally shattered my chains. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. According to my mother's strict societal standards, 4 decades of marriage demanded a flawless, extravagant spectacle. This translated to 30 elite guests, an outrageously expensive catered menu, which I was naturally expected to assist with to cut costs, and an entire evening dedicated to bowing down to the Foster family's picture-perfect legacy. My grueling labor commenced a full week before the event. I was forced to sacrifice 4 days of paid accounting work just to manage the setup. I personally ordered the lavish floral arrangements, strictly white roses and peonies, per my mother's demanding specifications. I sat at the dining table and hand-calligraphed 60 individual name cards because she refused to use printed ones. I micromanaged the catering staff, obsessively ironed the imported tablecloths, and hand-polished the delicate Waterford crystal wine glasses they had received on their wedding day 40 years ago. When the day of the party finally arrived, I was at their house by 6:30 a.m. I showed up in faded jeans and a baggy t-shirt, knowing full well I would be trapped in the sweltering kitchen for the next 11 hours. By 6 p.m., the colonial house was a masterpiece. Expensive candles illuminated every single surface. The massive dining table dominated the living room, flawlessly set for 30 people utilizing the forbidden china. I slipped into the downstairs bathroom and changed into a very modest, plain black dress. I intentionally picked something completely unremarkable so I would not draw any focus. "Delilah." My mom's sharp voice caught me as I stepped out into the hallway. She aggressively looked me up and down, her eyebrows furrowing in deep disapproval. "Is that what you decided to wear tonight?" "It is a black dress," I replied defensively. I figured it was professional and appropriate. "Well, it is fine, I suppose," she sighed, waving a dismissive hand. "Just make sure you stay out of the background photos. Tonight is exclusively about your father and me." I offered a numb nod. That is what I did. I always nodded. The guests began pouring through the front door at 7 p.m. Older men clad in tailored sports coats, women dripping in expensive jewelry and cocktail dresses. It was a sea of retired banking colleagues, elite church acquaintances, and wealthy neighbors whose grass was just as obsessively manicured as ours. 30 human beings who genuinely believed they knew the fabulous Foster family. Absolutely none of them knew the real me. But in less than 3 hours, none of that would matter anyway. Natalie made her grand entrance at 7:15 p.m., meticulously calculating her arrival to guarantee all eyes were on her. She swept into the foyer modeling a striking red wrap dress, which she loudly informed everyone was an authentic Diane von Furstenberg, with Spencer trailing behind her in a sharp charcoal suit. Their 3 children were scrubbed clean and dressed like wealthy catalog models. My mother practically sprinted across the hardwood to embrace her golden child, loudly exclaiming over how stunning Natalie looked, how impossibly handsome Spencer was, and how absolutely precious her grandchildren were. I stood silently in the kitchen doorway, gripping a heavy silver tray of bruschetta. "Attention everyone, you all remember my beautiful daughter Natalie and her brilliant husband Spencer," my mother announced, projecting her voice to the entire room. "Spencer is officially a senior partner at Whitmore and Associates now. They just promoted him last year. We are just bursting with pride." Thunderous applause broke out. Smiles and handshakes were passed around. Unsurprisingly, my mother conveniently forgot to mention that I was the personal accountant who meticulously handled Spencer's complex partnership taxes for the last 4 years, completely free of charge, of course. I spent the next hour circulating through the crowd with heavy appetizer trays, topping off expensive wine glasses, and politely dodging questions from distant acquaintances who had zero clue who I was. "Oh, are you with the private catering company?" one older woman asked me as she plucked a crab cake off my tray. Before I could even open my mouth, my mother materialized beside me. "Oh, heavens no. That is just Delilah, my other daughter. She is just helping out for the evening." The woman offered a tight, incredibly uncomfortable smile and quickly pivoted away. My mother did not even register the awkwardness. She never did. Midway through the cocktail hour, Spencer marched up to me. Benjamin was violently squirming in his arms, and Ethan was aggressively yanking on his expensive suit jacket while Olivia tugged at his pant leg. "Hey, can you take them?" Spencer demanded. "Natalie and I really need to go mingle with the partners." He did not say, "Would you mind?" He did not offer a thank you. He just aggressively shoved his children toward me like they were heavy pieces of luggage he was tired of carrying. So, I took them. I sequestered them in the kitchen and fed them their dinner. I patiently scrubbed Olivia's face with a wet towel when she spilled grape juice all over her collar. I animatedly read Ethan 3 separate storybooks just to prevent him from sprinting into the living room and ruining the perfect aesthetic. I rocked Benjamin to sleep in my arms while standing over the stove. By the time I finally emerged from my babysitting duties, the catering staff was already distributing the dessert course. I had not consumed a single bite of food since 6 a.m. Unsurprisingly, not a single person had bothered to save a plate for me. The catastrophic announcement was deployed at exactly 9 p.m., right as the guests were digging into my mother's famous tiramisu. My father stood up from the head of the table, gently clinking his silver fork against his crystal champagne flute. A respectful hush washed over the room. 30 expectant faces swiveled to face the patriarch. "Patricia and I want to extend our deepest gratitude to every single one of you for joining us this evening," my dad began, his voice oozing with rehearsed, corporate charisma. 40 years of holy matrimony. For entire decades dedicated to constructing this incredible family, this beautiful life, and this wonderful home. My mother was practically glowing with radioactive pride beside him. Natalie lovingly reached across the table and grabbed Spencer's hand. I remained standing near the kitchen's swinging door, clutching a stack of dirty dessert plates. And to properly celebrate this monumental milestone, my father continued, pausing for dramatic flair. "We have a massive surprise announcement." My mother's eyes danced with glee. "Next week, we are taking the entire family on a fully paid vacation to the Bahamas. One glorious week at the Atlantis resort. A second, intimate celebration, just the Fosters." The dining room instantly erupted in joyous, appreciative murmurs. "How unbelievably wonderful. What an incredible gift. You two absolutely deserve it." Natalie actually let out a high-pitched squeal. "Oh my God, Dad, that is incredible. The kids are going to completely lose their minds." For a split second, I actually felt a warm balloon of hope inflate in my chest. The entire family. That phrasing included me. For the very first time in my adult life, I was not going to be the unpaid chef, the maid, or the nanny. I was actually going to be included in a core family memory. I took a hopeful step forward, allowing a genuine smile to break across my face. "That sounds absolutely incredible," I said, my voice carrying over the chatter. "What time is our flight?" The innocent question hung suspended in the air. My father's warm, charismatic expression instantly vanished. He shot a frantic, sideways glance at my mother. A silent, deeply uncomfortable communication passed between them. It was a look I had witnessed 1,000 times in my life, but I never truly deciphered its cruelty until this exact second. "Delilah," my dad said, speaking incredibly slowly. "You do not need to worry about the flight time." The entire dining room went dead silent. And it was not the warm, fuzzy silence of a happy surprise. It was the suffocating, agonizing quiet of a room realizing they were witnessing a car crash. "I do not understand," I whispered, the dirty plates trembling in my hands. My dad awkwardly cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "Because you're not coming with us." 30 pairs of eyes. That is the exact number of human beings who sat in total silence and watched my own father publicly excommunicate me from a family vacation. "Somebody needs to stay behind," my mother quickly interjected, using a tone that implied I was being incredibly dense. "Natalie and Spencer are in desperate need of a real, relaxing vacation. That means you will be staying here to watch the children." But I stammered, my face burning with white-hot humiliation. "Honestly, Delilah," my mother's voice instantly sharpened into a blade. "You literally do not have anything important to do with your time. Natalie works incredibly hard. She deserves a luxurious break." Natalie works hard. Natalie, who had not clocked into a paying job since the day Ethan was born. Natalie, who employed a private nanny 4 days a week and still constantly whined about how utterly exhausted she was. "Look, it is just for 1 week," Spencer chimed in, refusing to even make eye contact with me. "The kids absolutely adore you." I stood paralyzed in my cheap black dress, clutching a stack of smeared dessert plates, while 3 dozen strangers watched me be casually dismissed from my own bloodline like a rogue servant. Some of the guests looked physically ill with discomfort. Most of them cowardly stared down at their laps. But I saw one older woman, a neighbor whose name I did not even know, lean heavily into her husband's shoulder. She did not whisper quietly enough. "Poor thing," I heard her mutter. "She must be totally used to being treated like that by now." The crystal champagne flute in my hand began to violently shake. I slowly placed the dirty plates down on a side table. I placed the glass next to them, terrified that if I held onto them for 1 more second, I would shatter them against the wall. Of course, I heard my own voice say, sounding robotic and hollow, "I completely understand." I forced a tight, polite smile onto my face. It was the exact same pathetic smile I had been deeply conditioned to wear for 33 years. The smile of the girl who just helps out. The girl who never causes a scene. The girl who is always, always just there. But deep within the core of my chest, something massive finally gave way. I did not completely shatter. I just cracked. Like a massive tectonic fault line shifting deep beneath the earth, right before a catastrophic earthquake. I quietly excused myself and retreated into the kitchen. I leaned my entire body weight against the cold marble counter and squeezed my eyes shut. And for the very first time in my pathetic, subservient existence, I began to draft a wildly different kind of plan. Naturally, the lavish party simply carried on without me. I remained trapped in the kitchen, mechanically scrubbing food off china plates, while the joyful sounds of clinking glasses and boisterous laughter echoed from the living room. Eventually, Natalie sashayed into the kitchen, the luxurious fabric of her red wrap dress swishing against the door frame. "Delilah, please do not be upset about this," she sighed, reaching out and lightly touching my arm. "You know exactly how it is. Spencer and I desperately need to reconnect. Our stress levels have been totally off the charts lately with the kids running wild." I aggressively kept my hands plunged in the soapy water. "I understand. Besides, you have such a magic touch with Ethan, Olivia, and Benjamin. They will be having so much fun with you, they will not even realize Spencer and I are gone." I rigorously rinsed a champagne flute, placed it carefully into the drying rack, and refused to utter a single word. Natalie let out a heavy, dramatic sigh, her signature move whenever she decided I was being difficult. "Look, it is a measly 7 days. And it is not like you have a husband or a boyfriend tying you down right now. Your schedule is totally flexible." Flexible. There was that disgusting buzzword again. They constantly used it to justify the delusion that my time held absolutely zero value simply because I dictated how I spent it. Spencer already typed up a master list, she plowed on, pulling out her ridiculously expensive smartphone. It has their entire daily schedule and a list of food allergies. Olivia absolutely cannot have strawberries, remember? Oh, and Ethan is fighting off this weird ear thing. He might need his prescription drops. I will just text the whole manual to you. She never once stopped to ask if I was actually willing to do it. She just blindly assumed I would submit. Spencer suddenly pushed through the swinging door, aggressively loosening his silk tie. "Is everything all sorted in here?" "Yep." "Great," Natalie chirped. "We're going to head home early to start packing the suitcases. Your mom wants to do a massive family photo shoot before we leave for the airport tomorrow." They vanished through the door before I could even formulate a response. Not that I would have fought back. I never fought back. But as I stood utterly alone in my mother's pristine kitchen, staring blankly at the massive wall of text instructions Natalie had just fired to my phone, a single, crystal-clear realization finally locked into place. They do not view me as a family member. I am viewed as the hired staff. And the staff reserves the absolute right to resign. It was pushing midnight when I stumbled across the digital smoking gun. The final stragglers had finally cleared out. My parents had dragged themselves upstairs to bed, completely drained from absorbing 40 years' worth of ego-stroking. I was alone in the dimly lit living room, meticulously folding the expensive tablecloths, when I suddenly realized I was severely late in delivering an accounting file to a client. I had completely neglected my actual job to throw this party. My personal laptop was back at my apartment. However, my mother's silver MacBook was sitting wide open on the kitchen island. "She will not mind," I rationalized to myself. She had borrowed my personal belongings thousands of times without an ounce of permission. I tapped the trackpad to wake the screen. The Safari browser was already pulled up, and her personal Gmail inbox was staring me right in the face. I know I should have immediately opened a new tab. I know I should have respected her digital privacy. But my eyes instantly locked onto my own name sitting in the subject line of a very recent email thread. Subject: Bahamas arrangements / Delilah situation. My finger trembled as it hovered over the mouse. I knew I should not click it. I knew that whatever venom was waiting inside that thread was going to mentally destroy me. I clicked it anyway. The chain was an active conversation between my mother and Natalie, initiated a full week prior to the anniversary party. From Patricia Foster to Natalie Hartley. "We will just keep Delilah here to watch the kids. She literally does not have anything important to do with her life anyway." Spencer was totally right. It is exactly like having free help. Honestly, she should be grateful we are giving her a purpose and something to do. And then I scrolled down to read my sister's response. "Totally agree, Mom. She will probably feel super useful for once. Her life is kind of sad, honestly, but at least it works out perfectly for us." Winky face. I sat on a kitchen stool and read those venomous sentences 3 times to ensure my brain was accurately processing the cruelty. Free help. She should be grateful. Kind of sad. I calmly took high-resolution screenshots of the entire thread. I emailed the images directly to my personal inbox. I systematically deleted the evidence from her sent folder and meticulously scrubbed the browser's history so she would never know I had been there. Then, I sat in the suffocating darkness of my childhood home and finally allowed myself to fully accept exactly what I was to these people. I drove back to my apartment at 1 a.m., the Boston streets completely barren. My living space was incredibly modest, a tiny one-bedroom unit in a complex that had not seen a renovation since the early 90s. It had cheap beige carpets, plain white walls, and a collection of mismatched thrift store furniture. The one single time my mother had ever visited, she openly called it deeply depressing. But it was mine. It was the only space on Earth where I could fully inflate my lungs. I sat on my lumpy couch in the pitch black for a very long time, staring at the glowing screen of my cell phone. Marcus Coleman's email was still sitting in my inbox, the massive gallery opportunity one had tentatively replied to, but never officially followed up on. We had briefly exchanged a few messages regarding a face-to-face meeting. He was demanding to view my entire physical portfolio. He was intensely passionate about the Unseen series. I could actually go. I could pack my bags and go. I picked up the phone and dialed the only human being in my bloodline who possessed a soul. Aunt Ruth picked up on the second ring, despite the fact that it was pushing 2 a.m. on the East Coast. Delilah, her voice was thick with sleep, but instantly laced with concern. What is wrong? I told her everything. I poured out the agonizing details of the public humiliation at the dinner table. I told her about the ridiculous babysitting manual. And my voice violently cracked exactly one time when I read the words "free help" out loud to her from the screenshot. When I finally ran out of breath, the phone line was dead quiet. Then, Aunt Ruth delivered a sentence that became my lifeline. Delilah, listen to me very carefully. I have a beautiful spare bedroom located right above the cafe. I desperately need a reliable hand for the early morning shifts anyway. And that prestigious gallery? It is exactly a 20-minute drive from my front door. Aunt Ruth, I cannot just abandon my entire... Yes, you absolutely can, she cut me off, her voice radiating pure, unadulterated power. You can pack your bags and leave. You can finally choose yourself for once in your life. The only person standing in your way right now is you. I ended the call at 2 a.m. By 6 a.m., my entire existence was packed into boxes. I managed to condense my life into 4 large suitcases, my expensive camera gear, my laptop, and the frayed cashmere scarf that had fiercely protected my pawnshop canon for 4 years. I intentionally left the glittery world's best and apron hanging on the back of my kitchen door. For the very first time in my 33 years on this earth, I was choosing myself. If you have stuck with me this far, I want to pause and ask you a very serious question. Have you ever found yourself standing at a crossroads where you were forced to choose between serving your toxic family or saving your own sanity? Have you ever realized that staying in a situation meant entirely losing your own identity? Tell me down in the comments, what would your breaking point be? Would you stay and endure the abuse, or would you pack your bags and run? And if this story is hitting close to home, please smash that like button. Now, let me tell you about the absolute explosion that occurred when I finally dropped the bomb on them. Exactly 2 days before the Foster family was scheduled to jet off to their Bahamian paradise, I drove my beat-up Honda over to my parents' house for the grand finale. I walked into the living room to find my mother obsessively color-coordinating their tropical resort wear on the dining table. Natalie was sprawled across the plush sofa, lazily scrolling through Yelp reviews of Bahamas restaurants. Spencer was pacing somewhere upstairs, loudly barking into his phone on a corporate conference call. My dad was buried deep in his leather armchair reading the morning newspaper, physically occupying the room, but completely emotionally vacant, exactly as he had been for 33 years. I have something important I need to tell you all, I announced from the entryway. My mother did not even bother to look up from her stack of linen pants. If you are panicking about the children's nap schedule, Natalie already emailed you the PDF. This is not about the schedule, I said, forcing my voice to remain terrifyingly calm. I am not watching Ethan, Olivia, and Benjamin. I am no longer available. That single sentence sucked the oxygen out of the room. Natalie's head violently snapped up from her phone. My mother's hands physically froze in the air over a pile of floral sundresses. "What on earth do you mean you are not available?" my mom demanded, her eyes narrowing. "I received a massive professional work opportunity out in California. I am driving out there tomorrow morning." "California?" My dad slowly lowered his newspaper, peering at me over his reading glasses. "What specific kind of work opportunity?" "It is a professional career move. Something I have been aggressively building toward for years." I absolutely refused to hand them the details. I did not owe these people a single shred of my joy. I did not owe them anything. Natalie's face contorted into a mask of pure, selfish panic. "Delilah, you literally cannot be serious right now. I am heavily counting on you. We designed this entire luxury vacation around you being here. You designed your plans around my life without ever once asking for my consent," I replied quietly. "I am not canceling my future simply because you all blindly assumed I did not have one." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Suddenly, my mother violently pushed herself away from the table. Her voice dropped to a temperature that could freeze water. "This is unbelievably selfish behavior, Delilah. Your sister is in desperate need of your help. Family comes first." "Family comes first," I echoed, staring directly into her eyes. "Except, of course, when it comes to extending an invitation to the Bahamas." Her mouth popped open, but no sound came out. She snapped it shut. For the very first time in recorded history, Patricia Foster was utterly speechless. My dad cleared his throat aggressively. "If you turn your back and walk out that door, do not expect us to welcome you back into this house with open arms." "I completely understand," I said. And for the very first time in my life, I actually meant it. The subsequent 24 hours were an absolute masterclass in toxic psychological warfare. My mother blew up my phone with 8 separate voicemails. Every single message escalated the dramatic theatrics. "You are single-handedly ripping this family to shreds, Delilah. I really hope you can live with that guilt. Your poor father is completely devastated. He could not even stomach his dinner tonight. Natalie has been weeping hysterically all evening. Your niece and nephew are crying, asking why Aunt Delilah is abandoning them." Natalie decided to deploy a completely different tactic: weaponized vulnerability. She flooded my inbox with texts. "Delilah, I honestly cannot fathom why you are intentionally doing this to me. I am your flesh and blood sister. Do you possess an ounce of care for us at all?" And then came the final, vicious text that nearly broke my resolve. "You are going to end up dying totally alone, you know that, right? Just like Aunt Ruth. Is that the pathetic life you actually want?" I sat on my bare mattress and stared at that specific glowing message for a very long time. Just like Aunt Ruth. Natalie had hurled that comparison like a toxic grenade, intending to terrify me into submission. But my brain processed it differently. Aunt Ruth operated her own successful business. She created breathtaking art. She constructed a beautiful, peaceful life entirely on her own terms. Aunt Ruth was genuinely happy. Ending up like Aunt Ruth was not a horrific threat. It was a beautiful promise. I powered down my cell phone. The absolute last thing I did before permanently fleeing Boston was walk through my hollowed-out apartment. My 4 massive suitcases were stacked neatly by the front door. Every single other item was going to be left behind to rot. The lumpy thrift store couch, the depressing beige carpets, the pathetic, subservient life I had been desperately living to please everyone else. I used a strip of packing tape to secure my spare apartment key to a blank envelope and slid it under my landlord's office door. I was on a month-to-month lease, fully paid through the end of February. It was the cleanest break imaginable. I shoved my suitcases into the trunk of my car just as the morning sun began to bleed over the horizon. My beat-up Honda Civic, 12 years old but fiercely reliable, was the exact same vehicle my mother had openly sneered at for years. And it was the vehicle that was about to carry me to my salvation. I put the car in drive and did not look in the rearview mirror a single time as I pulled away from the curb. The grueling cross-country drive from Boston, Massachusetts, to Santa Barbara, California, takes roughly 48 hours of pure driving if you aggressively push through the nights. I chose not to push it. I stretched the journey over 6 glorious days. I slept in cheap, roadside motels and ate greasy food at obscure diners where absolutely nobody knew my trauma. Somewhere in the sprawling flatlands of Nebraska, I pulled my Honda over at a desolate rest stop and just sat on the hood of my car, watching the sunset set the prairie on fire with brilliant shades of gold, violent pink, and deep violet. I pulled my Canon out of its cashmere scarf and photographed it. It was my very first image captured as a truly free woman. On the third day of my exodus, I briefly powered on my cell phone to double-check my GPS routing. The screen instantly lit up with a text message from Natalie. Mom explicitly said that if you are not sitting in your apartment when we return from the Bahamas, you are completely dead to her. I read the cruel words exactly one time. Then I hit delete. My mother had been treating me like a ghost my entire life anyway. At least now, I was going to be fully alive somewhere else. On day 4, I used a sketchy payphone at an Arizona gas station to call Aunt Ruth. I am roughly 10 hours outside the city limits, I told her, my voice shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Your bedroom is perfectly prepped, she replied warmly. I put fresh sheets on the bed. You have a gorgeous view of the ocean, and Marcus Coleman desperately wants to meet with you tomorrow afternoon, assuming you are not completely dead on your feet. My stomach aggressively flip-flopped. Tomorrow? Aunt Ruth, that is insanely fast. Delilah. Her tone was fierce and brimming with absolute certainty. You have been waiting for this exact moment for 4 grueling years. This is not fast. This is finally. When my Honda finally crossed the California state line, the atmosphere inside my chest fundamentally altered. The vast, endless, sparkling blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean materialized on my left. I aggressively rolled down my driver's side window and inhaled the thick, salty air for the very first time in my existence. I completely broke down crying behind the wheel. Not out of fear or homesickness or sadness. I wept out of pure, unadulterated relief. It was the overwhelming, crushing sensation of limitless possibility. At exactly 7 p.m. on my 6th day of driving, I pulled into the crushed gravel driveway of the Ceramic Cup, Aunt Ruth's legendary cafe and pottery studio nestled in the heart of Santa Barbara. She was already standing on the wraparound porch, her arms thrown wide open. Welcome home, she beamed. And for the very first time in 33 years, a piece of real estate actually felt like one. Santa Barbara is the type of mystical coastal town that legitimately does not feel real when you first arrive. It is packed with Spanish-style cottages boasting red-tiled roofs and lush gardens. There are high-end art galleries occupying every single street corner, and a thick, magical ocean mist constantly rolls through the palm trees. The entire municipality felt like an oil painting that someone had literally dreamed into reality. Aunt Ruth's property was situated on a serene, quiet street just 3 blocks away from the crashing waves of the beach. The Ceramic Cup featured a beautiful hand-lettered wooden sign, vibrant blue window shutters, and massive window boxes practically overflowing with fragrant purple lavender. The messy, beautiful pottery studio consumed the entire back half of the building. This was where Ruth hosted daily ceramics classes and sold her expensive, handcrafted wares to the wealthy tourists who wandered in hunting for a latte. My sanctuary was located upstairs. It was a modest, tiny room, but flooded with brilliant natural light. It held a simple twin bed covered in a crisp white quilt, a heavy wooden writing desk shoved against the window, and a staggering view of the Pacific Ocean that made my chest ache with an emotion I did not even have a name for yet. You will be covering the morning cafe shifts, Aunt Ruth casually explained over a massive dinner of roasted chicken that first evening. You work 6 a.m. until noon. Once the clock strikes 12, your time is 100% your own. Aunt Ruth, I honestly do not possess the vocabulary to thank you for this, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes again. She swatted her hand through the air dismissively. Do not waste your breath thanking me. Just build your empire. That is the only payment I will ever accept. The following morning, my alarm went off long before the sun breached the horizon. I tied a thick canvas apron around my waist. It was not that humiliating, glittery world's best ant monstrosity I had permanently abandoned in Boston. It was a beautifully simple garment with a ceramic cup elegantly embroidered in blue thread across the chest. Aunt Ruth patiently taught me the intricate art of brewing the perfect pour-over coffee. A steady stream of customers filtered in and out all morning. There were wealthy locals who cheerfully greeted Ruth by her first name, and sunburned tourists who were completely enchanted by her massive, homemade blueberry scones. I happily took down orders, vigorously wiped down the wooden tables, and engaged in warm, meaningless small talk with total strangers who had absolutely no clue I had just detonated my entire life 6 days prior. By the time the clock struck noon, I had pocketed $42 in cash tips. I had genuinely smiled more in those 6 hours than I had in the previous 6 months. And at 2 p.m. sharp, I was scheduled to walk through the doors of the Coastal Light Gallery. I sprinted upstairs, took a scorching shower, wriggled into the nicest, most professional dress I had managed to pack, and nervously walked the 3 blocks down the street to finally meet the man who held my future in his hands. Marcus Coleman looked absolutely nothing like the intimidating, corporate art shark I had conjured in my nightmares. I was fully expecting a ruthless man with slicked-back hair draped in an aggressive designer suit, the type of gallery owner who intentionally made amateur artists feel microscopic. Instead, the man who warmly greeted me at the entrance was incredibly tall, ruggedly weathered, possessing a shock of thick silver hair and radiating incredibly kind eyes. He was wearing a relaxed, unbuttoned linen shirt with the sleeves casually rolled up to his elbows. He smiled at me like we had been close friends for a decade. "Delilah Foster," he practically cheered, aggressively shaking my hand. "Ruth has chewed my ear off talking about you. But honestly, the work completely speaks for itself." He gave me a grand tour of his empire. The gallery was stunning. Massive, pristine white walls, flooded with perfect natural skylight. Intricate photographs and massive oil paintings were displayed with surgical, careful precision. This was an incredibly serious establishment. This was a sanctuary where art commanded immense respect. "I have spent hours meticulously combing through your entire Instagram archive," Marcus told me as we strolled the hardwood floors. "The unseen collection is absolutely extraordinary. You have managed to capture a raw, bleeding truth in those images that veteran photographers spend their entire lives hunting for." I was completely speechless. I had never, ever heard a human being describe something I created with that level of reverence. This specific one. He abruptly halted in front of a massive, glowing digital monitor that was currently cycling through my portfolio. The screen froze on a black and white photograph I had captured over 3 years ago. It featured a frail, elderly woman sitting entirely alone on a rusted bench at a Boston bus stop. Her weathered face was an intricate map of deep lines, radiating a quiet, devastating dignity. "This is the exact image that forced me to reach out to you," Marcus whispered, staring at the screen. There is something utterly profound hiding in her eyes. It is extreme patience. Or perhaps total resignation. It is beautifully heartbreaking. She was waiting for a city bus that was running incredibly late. I finally found my voice. She had been sitting alone in the freezing wind for over 50 minutes. Hundreds of people walked right past her. Not a single person stopped to ask if she needed help. Marcus slowly nodded his head. "You actually see human beings, Delilah. You truly see them. That is a very rare gift." He slowly pivoted to face me, and the next sentence out of his mouth hit me like a physical shockwave. "I would like to formally offer you a solo exhibition in this gallery. 18 of your best pieces. We will launch opening night in exactly 8 weeks. My gallery will front 100% of the production costs, the large-scale printing, the custom framing, and the massive marketing campaign. You will personally retain 60% of every single sale." I found myself sitting at Marcus's sleek, modern desk that very Tuesday afternoon, bathed in the golden California sunlight streaming through his massive office windows. The official legal contract was sitting right in front of me. The terms were incredibly straightforward. I would provide 18 high-resolution photographs. The grand opening gala was slated for late September. The Coastal Light Gallery was legally bound to handle all the grueling logistics, the expensive production, the mounting, the installation, and the glossy promotional materials. I would pocket a massive 60% of all gross revenue, with the gallery securing the remaining 40% as their standard commission. These are incredibly standard terms, Marcus assured me with a warm smile. Very fair terms for an emerging artist. But as my eyes scanned the dense legal paragraphs, my hands began to violently shake. Please take all the time you need, Marcus offered gently. This is a massive leap. He completely misunderstood my panic. It was not the aggressive financial terms that were overwhelming my nervous system. It was the fact that I was staring at my own name, printed in bold, official legal typography. Artist, Delilah Foster. It was a legally binding document officially recognizing that my mind, my perspective, and my labor possessed extreme, tangible value. I suddenly flashed back to the hundreds of hours I had spent meticulously filing my wealthy brother-in-law's taxes without a sliver of credit. I thought about the endless, grueling holiday parties I had orchestrated without receiving a single thank you. I thought about the thousands of hours I had sacrificed raising my sister's children, kids who would inevitably grow up completely ignorant of the life I had bled out for them. Not one single time in 33 years had the name Delilah Foster ever been printed on a document that celebrated my existence. Until this exact second. We need to finalize the official title of the exhibition, Marcus noted, pointing his pen to a blank line near the bottom of the page. I obviously need your final approval. The gallery team is heavily proposing, unseen, portraits of the overlooked. Unseen. It is absolutely perfect, I whispered through tears. I firmly gripped the pen and signed my name on the dotted line. Marcus aggressively scribbled his signature as the countersign. The binding document was immediately stamped and notarized by his executive assistant, a sharp young woman named Julia, who executed the task with official, satisfying precision. When the ink dried, Marcus handed me my thick copy of the contract. Congratulations, Delilah. You are officially a represented, professional artist. I floated out the front doors of that gallery, tightly clutching the heavy manila folder against my chest. It was physical, undeniable proof that I was not a piece of furniture. It proved I had never been nothing. For 4 agonizing years, I had quietly built an empire in the pitch-black shadows of my family's neglect. Now, finally, I was violently dragging it into the light. While I was aggressively building a beautiful new life on the California coast, my toxic family was simultaneously discovering exactly what my sudden absence meant for their survival. Obviously, I did not get to witness their catastrophic meltdown firsthand. I heard all the juicy details weeks later, slowly piecing the disaster together through a chaotic string of frantic voicemails, furious text messages, and one incredibly awkward, desperate phone call from my father. Apparently, the luxurious Bahamian getaway was an absolute, unmitigated nightmare. Without their free help trapped in the hotel room to wrangle the kids, Natalie and Spencer failed to enjoy a single, peaceful adults-only dinner. Ethan threw a massive, screaming tantrum on the pristine resort beach because nobody had bothered to pack his favorite plastic sandcastle bucket, a tiny, crucial detail that I always religiously remembered to handle. Olivia developed a raging ear infection on the 3rd day of the trip, and total panic ensued because nobody had bothered to save the Boston pediatrician's emergency contact number. I had always been the designated keeper of their medical files. My mother apparently spent the vast majority of the expensive vacation loudly complaining that the elite resort staff was not catering to her every whim. She terrorized the front concierge desk, calling them 4 separate times to scream about the subpar turn-down service. She aggressively sent her expensive Mai Tai back to the bartender 3 times. This trip is not relaxing in the slightest, she reportedly shrieked in the hotel lobby. Who on earth planned this disaster? My father wisely chose not to remind his furious wife that she was the one who had planned the entire itinerary. The frantic text messages began assaulting my phone on day 4. Delilah, where the hell are the kids' medical insurance records? Delilah, what is Ethan's exact bedtime routine? He is screaming and refuses to sleep. Delilah, this stupid restaurant does not have a specific kids' menu. What do they normally eat? I did not reply to a single message. I was way too consumed with examining massive, glossy photo proofs at a high-end printing lab in Monterey, agonizing over custom frame selections, and sitting down for a 2-hour interview with a prominent journalist from Santa Barbara magazine who was desperate to profile me. But here is the beautiful reality about sudden absence. It violently forces people to confront the exact value of what they have been maliciously taking for granted. On day 6 of their hellish Bahamian vacation, Natalie finally did something she had never, ever done in her entire life. She opened a web browser and searched my name on Google. And for the very first time, the search results returned something far more intimidating than a blank page. Exactly 8 weeks later, I was standing dead in the center of the Coastal Light Gallery, struggling to convince my brain that this was my actual reality. 18 of my most powerful photographs hung proudly on the pristine white walls. Each image was blown up to massive proportions and encased in sleek, minimalist black frames. The entire gallery glowed with a soft, expensive ambient light. A live string quartet was softly playing classical music in the far corner, a touch Marcus had insisted upon to elevate the atmosphere. A professional bartender clad in a crisp, white tuxedo shirt was pouring endless glasses of imported champagne. 60 elite guests were elegantly circulating through the space. There were quirky local artists I had befriended through Aunt Ruth. There were incredibly wealthy, heavy-hitting art collectors that Marcus had personally invited. The journalist from Santa Barbara magazine was already prowling the room, aggressively scribbling notes on her pad. These were human beings who had cleared their schedules specifically to view my work. My art was hanging on gallery walls, boasting price tags that legitimately made my head spin. I was wearing a stunning, tailored navy blue dress. It was simple, wildly elegant, and absolutely did not scream for attention, but it commanded immediate respect. I had let my hair down in loose waves for the first time in years. I had even applied a bold red lipstick, a powerful accessory I typically avoided out of fear of being perceived. Aunt Ruth suddenly materialized at my side, proudly pressing a crystal flute of bubbling champagne into my trembling hand. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" "I am absolutely terrified," I confessed with a nervous laugh. "What happens if nobody buys a single print?" "Someone already did." She casually nodded her head toward an older, incredibly elegant woman draped in expensive pearls. The woman was deeply examining the absolute centerpiece of my entire exhibition, the photograph of the lonely woman at the Boston bus stop. It was the exact image that had initially snared Marcus's attention. A tiny, vibrant red dot had already been placed on the white gallery placard right next to the frame. "That woman right there is Mrs. Peyton," Aunt Ruth whispered excitedly. "She personally owns half the expensive real estate in Santa Barbara County. She just purchased that specific photograph for a cool $3,500. $3,500. For a moment, I had captured with a cheap pawnshop camera. "Delilah." Marcus approached us, a massive, triumphant grin plastered across his face. "I desperately need to introduce you to the senior editor from the magazine. They're actively discussing putting you on the front cover of next month's issue. A cover feature. A literal magazine cover. My face. My specific name. My tragic story, permanently etched in print for the world to see." I was halfway across the room to shake the editor's hand when the heavy glass doors of the gallery swung open, and my entire universe violently tilted on its axis. Natalie and Spencer confidently strode into the room. They were still sporting angry, peeling sunburns from their miserable Bahamian trip. They looked completely, laughably out of place in this high society setting. Natalie was wearing a cheap, overly bright floral sundress that looked far more appropriate for a boozy beach brunch than an elite fine art gala. Spencer was aggressively frowning down at his glowing smartphone screen, already annoyed. They both began scanning the crowded room, wearing that signature, arrogant expression my family always plastered on whenever they encountered an environment they felt culturally superior to. And then, Natalie's eyes locked onto mine. "Delilah," she shrieked, her voice aggressively slicing through the sophisticated hum of the gallery. She practically sprinted across the hardwood floor, throwing her arms wide open as if we were staging a tearful reunion in a movie. "Oh my God, Delilah. We have been absolutely sick with worry about you." All 60 wealthy guests immediately stopped talking and turned to stare. The professional string quartet actually faltered, missing a half beat of their song before frantically recovering. I did not step forward to hug her. I kept my voice terrifyingly calm. Natalie, this is incredibly unexpected. We obviously had to come track you down. Her eyes were blown wide, attempting to project earnest terror. We literally just flew into the state yesterday. Mom finally managed to track down your weird Instagram account. She has been frantically calling everyone trying to figure out where you ran off to. Spencer materialized behind her, offering me a stiff, curt nod, as if I were a junior paralegal at his law firm. Delilah, nice little place you have got here. It is a fine art gallery, I corrected him flatly. And it is specifically my gallery opening. Natalie aggressively blinked her eyes, finally pausing to actually absorb the massive photographs dominating the walls. She took in the wealthy guests in their designer suits, the flowing champagne, and finally, her eyes dropped to the staggering price tags printed on the placards. Wait, you actually shot all of this? Her voice dripped with genuine, insulting confusion. Since when on earth do you do photography? Since exactly 4 years ago, I replied coldly. You simply never bothered to ask what I did with my free time. Aunt Ruth quietly materialized right at my elbow, forming an impenetrable wall of silent support. From across the massive room, I saw Marcus watching the interaction like a hawk, physically bracing himself to intervene and throw them out if the situation devolved. Natalie aggressively leaned in, dropping her voice to a frantic, conspiratorial whisper. Okay, Delilah, listen to me. I have massive news. I am officially pregnant again. Baby number 4. And I desperately need you to pack your bags and come back home to Boston immediately. Spencer's workload at the firm is completely insane right now, and Mom is absolutely useless at helping me with the toddlers. I need you. And there it was. The absolute audacity. Not a single I'm sorry for how we treated you. Not a single congratulations on this massive career achievement. Just pure, unadulterated, toxic need. Always their blinding need. The disgusting words hung in the air between us like toxic gas. I need you. How many thousands of times had I been held hostage by that exact phrase? How many times had I instantly dropped everything, severely compromised my own life, and aggressively shrunk my existence just to cram myself into the tiny, miserable box they had built for me? Natalie, I said softly, my voice completely devoid of emotion. I am currently in the middle of hosting my opening night gala. I know, and this whole little setup is just super cute. It really is, she dismissed, literally waving her hand at my life's masterpiece, as if it were a high school science fair project. But we can hash all of this art stuff out later. Right now, I need a concrete date for when you are moving back. She is absolutely never moving back, Aunt Ruth's voice sliced through the tension like a razor blade. She lives in California now. Spencer aggressively stepped forward, his face twisting with arrogant corporate irritation. With all due respect, Ruth, keep your mouth shut. This is private family business. Family business? Aunt Ruth let out a short, piercing bark of a laugh. Oh, you mean the loving family that intentionally banned her from a group vacation and openly referred to her as free help in private emails she was not ever supposed to uncover? Natalie's sunburned face instantly drained of all blood. All around us, the wealthy guests had completely abandoned the pretense of not eavesdropping. The journalist from Santa Barbara magazine was practically vibrating, her expensive pen flying frantically across her notepad. That is totally out of context. We absolutely did not mean it like that. Natalie began to violently stammer, her eyes darting around the room. How exactly did you mean it, dear? The venomous question came directly from Mrs. Peyton, the obscenely wealthy collector who had just purchased my centerpiece. She casually strolled up to our circle, clutching her crystal champagne glass, watching the pathetic scene unfold with undisguised, predatory interest. I am sorry, Spencer snapped aggressively, his face turning red. Who the hell are you? I am the woman who just enthusiastically paid $3,500 for that young lady's spectacular artwork, Mrs. Peyton purred, gracefully nodding her head toward my bus stop photograph. And I am someone who is intensely curious as to why her alleged family seems to operate under the delusion that she should abandon a highly lucrative fine art career to become your unpaid babysitter. The temperature in the gallery instantly plummeted by 10 degrees. Natalie stared at me, pure, unadulterated panic radiating from her eyes. "Delilah, please, I am begging you. Let us go into a back room and talk about this privately." Let me pause right here for a second. Imagine your toxic family crashing the single most important, triumphant night of your entire existence, not to celebrate your massive success, but to violently drag you back into a miserable life where you were treated like dirt. What exact words would come out of your mouth? Tell me down in the comments. I genuinely want to know how you would handle this. And if you are desperate to hear how I publicly destroyed them, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss these stories. Now, let me tell you exactly what I said to her face. I did not retreat into a dark corner. I did not hide. For 33 grueling years, I had obsessively made myself as small as humanly possible. I had constantly whispered. I had relentlessly accommodated their abuse. I had willingly disappeared into the wallpaper. Not tonight. I took a massive, confident step forward, planting myself dead in the center of my own prestigious exhibition, and I projected my voice clearly enough for every single millionaire in that room to hear my verdict. "Natalie, I fully understand that you are pregnant again, and I genuinely offer you my congratulations. But I will absolutely never be returning to Boston to act as your unpaid childcare." "Delilah, I am not." "I am not finished speaking," I commanded, my voice striking like a whip. "You possess the financial means to hire a professional nanny. You can easily afford to hire 2 of them. Spencer pulls in a massive salary as a partner at Whitmore and Associates, and you have historically never possessed an ounce of difficulty blowing his cash. The only thing you cannot do is hire me, because I was never given the dignity of being paid." Natalie's jaw literally dropped open, but no words came out. She snapped it shut. All around us, I could physically feel the gallery's elite patrons aggressively leaning in, captivated by the slaughter. "This is not a cute little hobby," I continued, aggressively gesturing toward the massive black frames dominating the walls. "This is my career. I spent 4 agonizing years building this empire in total secrecy, while every single person in our bloodline happily assumed I possessed nothing important to do with my pathetic life. And just so we are crystal clear on the math." I aggressively pointed a finger directly at the photograph Mrs. Peyton had acquired. That single piece of paper just sold for $3,500. Tonight alone, in the last 2 hours, I have successfully sold 5 separate pieces, totaling $12,000 in gross revenue. My labor possesses immense value. I possess immense value. And I will absolutely never throw my future into an incinerator just to regress back into being your free help. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Spencer awkwardly cleared his throat, tugging at his tight collar. Natalie's eyes rapidly welled up with tears. Real, devastating tears this time, I realized. Not the fake, performative tears she used to manipulate our mother. And then, Marcus Coleman slowly lifted his hands and began to loudly clap. Aunt Ruth immediately joined in, her applause echoing off the glass. Mrs. Peyton gracefully raised her champagne flute high into the air in a silent, respectful salute. One by one, the wealthy collectors, the quirky artists, and the ravenous journalists followed suit. A thunderous wave of applause ripped through the pristine gallery. They were not clapping for my beautiful photographs. They were clapping for me. They were applauding the exact moment a broken woman finally stood up and screamed enough. I did not flash a wicked, triumphant smirk. I did not aggressively gloat in her face. I simply stared deeply into my older sister's weeping eyes and delivered my final sentence. "I genuinely hope your pregnancy is a healthy one, Natalie. I truly do." Then I turned my back on her and walked away. But the nightmare was not completely over. Exactly 20 minutes later, the heavy glass gallery doors violently swung open again. I was deeply engaged in a fascinating conversation with the Santa Barbara magazine journalist when I spotted them out of the corner of my eye. My parents were standing dead in the entryway, looking as though they had just teleported in from a horrific nightmare. My mother was aggressively swathed in her expensive Burberry trench coat, the specific garment she religiously hoarded for highly important public appearances. My father loomed behind her in a stiff blazer, looking incredibly uncomfortable and totally out of his depth. They frantically scanned the crowded room until their eyes locked onto their prey. Patricia Foster marched through the center of my gallery, operating under the delusion that she owned the real estate. "Delilah," she barked. Her tone was the exact same aggressive frequency she had deployed when I was an 8-year-old child who accidentally tracked muddy sneakers across her freshly mopped linoleum. "We need to speak. Right now." The journalist standing next to me raised a highly amused eyebrow. I politely excused myself and swiftly moved to intercept my furious parents before they could inflict any more collateral damage. "You flew all the way across the country," I stated evenly, blocking her path. "Of course we flew across the country. You completely vanished off the face of the earth. You maliciously abandoned your own family during our darkest hour of need." My mother's voice violently trembled with pure, righteous indignation. "And now I track you down to this place, and I find you running around playing make-believe artist while your poor sister is heavily pregnant and severely struggling." "Natalie is pregnant and incredibly wealthy," I sharply corrected her. "She is absolutely not struggling. She is simply inconvenienced. Do not act cruel, Delilah. This behavior is absolutely not you." "You are 100% correct." I took a massive, centering breath. "This is not the version of me you so desperately wanted. It is not the pathetic doormat you could blindly rely on to execute your every whim. But that specific Delilah was never actually seen, Mom. She was strictly used." My dad aggressively cleared his throat. "Delilah, your mother is simply attempting to say." "I know exactly what she is attempting to say, Dad." I fired back. "I have heard the exact same manipulative script my entire miserable life. Family always comes first. Make quiet sacrifices. Stop being so incredibly selfish." I locked eyes with him, refusing to blink. "But I strangely was not considered a part of the family when you bought the plane tickets to the Bahamas. Now was I? So, which reality is it? Am I a member of this family, or am I not?" Neither of them could formulate a single syllable in response. My mother, a seasoned veteran of emotional warfare, recovered her footing first. The Bahamas situation was one single, isolated vacation. She sneered dismissively. "You are dramatically blowing the entire scenario wildly out of proportion. Somebody had to stay behind to manage the children." "Somebody," I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "Why is that somebody always me? Why is it always me?" "Because you literally have an endless supply of free time. You do not have a husband to care for. You do not have any children of your own. What else of value could you possibly be doing with your life?" I had agonized for weeks over whether or not I would ever weaponize those screenshots. A tiny, pathetic fraction of my soul had prayed I would never be pushed far enough to pull the trigger. But standing in the epicenter of my own gallery, completely surrounded by my beautiful life's work and dozens of wealthy witnesses, I realized that some vicious truths demand to be dragged into the light. I calmly reached into my clutch and pulled out my smartphone. "Let me read a piece of literature to you," I announced, my voice carrying zero trace of a tremor. "This is a direct quote from a private email you sent to Natalie just days before the anniversary party." My mother's face instantly drained of all blood. She looked like she was about to faint. "We will just keep Delilah here to watch the kids," I read loudly and clearly. "She literally does not have anything important to do with her life anyway. It is exactly like having free help. Honestly, she should be grateful we are giving her a purpose and something to do." The gallery had completely flatlined. Not a single person was breathing. I could physically feel 60 pairs of eyes burning into our circle. And Natalie eagerly replied. I mercilessly continued. "She will probably feel super useful for once. Her life is kind of sad." Natalie, who was cowering a few feet away next to Spencer, looked like she was actively praying for a sinkhole to open up and swallow her whole. "Delilah," my dad stammered, stepping forward. "Where the hell did you acquire? It does not matter how I acquired it. The only thing that matters is that you wrote it." I slowly lowered my glowing screen. "I am not reading this aloud to maliciously embarrass you. I am reading it so you finally comprehend exactly why I ran away. You did not view me as a daughter or a sister. You viewed me as the hired staff. And the staff possesses the absolute right to quit. My mother's jaw opened, snapped shut, and opened again. For the very first time in her 60-something years on Earth, Patricia Foster had absolutely nothing to say. The journalist from Santa Barbara magazine was furiously writing so fast her pen was practically smoking. It was Spencer, the arrogant corporate lawyer, who finally cracked under the pressure. "This entire spectacle is utterly ridiculous," he barked aggressively, stepping into my space. "Delilah, you are throwing a massive, theatrical tantrum over absolutely nothing. Your family politely asked you for a babysitting favor. Big deal. That is exactly what families do for each other. Not everyone in the real world gets to run away to the beach and play pretend artist." Pretend. Mrs. Peyton's voice sliced through the tension like a frozen icicle. I literally just transferred $3,500 for her artwork. She took a slow, intimidating step towards Spencer. "I absolutely do not pay that caliber of cash for pretend." Spencer slowly spun around, his aggressive corporate composure violently shattering. "With all due respect, ma'am, you have absolutely zero understanding of this family's dynamics. This is a private matter. Actually, I am fully equipped with all the information I require." Mrs. Peyton gracefully placed her empty champagne flute onto a passing waiter's silver tray. "I know that this brilliant young woman has dedicated years of her life to photographing the exhausted human beings that society actively chooses to overlook. And now I know that her own blood relatives treated her with that exact same disgusting indifference." A loud, judgmental murmur violently rippled through the gathered crowd. The millionaire guests were openly, aggressively staring at my parents now. This was the exact type of high society attention my mother had spent decades desperately craving, but she was receiving it in the form of a public execution. My mother frantically attempted to salvage her burning reputation. "This is a massive misunderstanding. Silly family inside jokes are being maliciously ripped out of context." "A joke," another voice chimed in. It was a wealthy woman in her late 60s sporting elegant silver hair, a collector to whom I had sold a large print earlier that evening. Looking your own child in the eye and telling her she possesses nothing important to do? Labeling her as your free help? What exactly is the punchline to that joke? More disgusted murmurs. More aggressive judgment. The precious social capital my mother had spent 40 years hoarding was evaporating into the California atmosphere in real time. "I think," Aunt Ruth said, her voice dripping with lethal politeness, "it is officially time for you people to leave my niece's gallery." My mother's face flushed a violent, humiliating shade of scarlet. My dad quickly grabbed her elbow. Natalie was actively sobbing now raw, utterly humiliated tears. Spencer stood completely paralyzed, finally processing the reality that his aggressive courtroom bullying tactics held absolutely zero power in this room. "Delilah," my mother hissed, her voice violently shaking with rage and embarrassment. "You are going to deeply regret this." "No," I replied softly, offering her a calm smile. "I really will not." My mother was the first to retreat. She violently spun on her expensive heels without uttering another syllable, practically dragging my defeated father out the door behind her. The heavy glass gallery door swung shut with a muted click that somehow felt infinitely louder than a screaming match. Natalie pathetically lingered behind, her expensive mascara completely smeared down her cheeks, her arms wrapped tightly around her torso like a toddler caught stealing candy. "Delilah," her voice violently cracked in half. "I honestly did not know you harbored this much resentment. I genuinely thought you enjoyed helping us out." "No, Natalie, you did not," I replied, my voice completely devoid of malice. "You simply never bothered to think about it at all. None of you ever did." Spencer placed a heavy hand on his crying wife's shoulder. For the first time all evening, he kept his mouth completely shut. Perhaps the hotshot lawyer had finally run out of arguments. "I genuinely hope your pregnancy is a smooth one," I added softly. "I hope your 4 children live beautiful lives. But I refuse to act as their living, breathing servant anymore. If you ever want a place in my reality, the dynamic has to drastically change. It has to be an equal partnership." Natalie aggressively nodded her head, the tears freely flowing. I understand." I was not entirely convinced she actually did, but it was no longer my responsibility to educate her. They slowly turned and exited through the exact same glass doors our parents had used. The entire gallery seemed to release a massive, collective exhale. Aunt Ruth immediately materialized by my side, wrapping a fiercely protective arm around my shaking shoulders. "Are you okay, kiddo?" I think so." I let out a shaky, adrenaline-fueled laugh. I literally just annihilated my entire bloodline in front of 60 strangers at my own fine art exhibition. "You absolutely did," she beamed proudly. "And you were utterly magnificent." Marcus quickly approached, eagerly pressing a fresh, bubbling glass of champagne into my hand. For whatever it is worth, I have been operating in the fine art space for over 20 years. I have never, ever witnessed an opening night gala quite as explosive as this one. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" I asked nervously. He flashed a massive, brilliant smile. "Let us just say that every single person in this zip code is going to permanently remember your name. And that Delilah Foster is the exact currency a rising artist desperately needs." I slowly scanned the room. I looked at my stunning photographs. I looked at my prestigious gallery. I looked at my beautiful, messy new life. For the very first time in my existence, I did not feel invisible. By the time the gallery staff finally locked the doors that night, I had successfully sold 10 out of my 18 displayed photographs. 10 massive pieces, generating an astonishing $22,000 in total gross sales. Exactly $13,200 of that cash belonged entirely to me, my rightful 60% split, exactly as the legal contract had promised. Marcus proudly handed me the official itemized printout of the evening's transactions as the caterers packed up the remaining champagne. Not a terrible haul for an opening night, especially one hijacked by some unexpected family theater. I stared blankly at the ink on the page. $13,200. That was significantly more cash than I had banked in 4 entire months of grinding away at my part-time accounting gig. "Mrs. Peyton wants to officially commission a private piece," Marcus continued casually, blowing my mind yet again. "She owns a massive, modern vacation estate down in Big Sur. She desperately wants you to photograph the jagged coastline for her living room. A private commission. Elite private collectors frequently operate this way," he explained. "She is absolutely obsessed with your unique perspective. She wants to see exactly what you can extract from her landscape." He handed me a sleek black business card containing her private assistant's direct contact info. "Give them a ring next week." I meticulously tucked the card into my clutch, placing it safely next to my gallery contract and the magazine reporter's information. "Oh, and speaking of the press," Marcus added, his eyes twinkling. "Susan confirmed she acquired more than enough explosive material for a massive feature. They're officially locking you in for next month's front cover. The front cover of a glossy magazine, featuring my legal name, my actual face, and my unvarnished truth." Later that night, Aunt Ruth helped me carefully transport the 8 unsold frames back to my tiny bedroom above the cafe. 8 photographs were still patiently waiting for the right buyer, but selling 10 out of 18 was a miraculous triumph. It meant that total strangers had looked at my soul and assigned it immense value. I gently placed the gallery check down on my wooden desk. It was the very first piece of currency I had ever generated from my own creativity. I pulled out my camera and photographed the check. Not to post on Instagram. Not to brag to the world. Just a private memento to ensure I never forgot the feeling. Payable to Delilah Foster, $13,200. It was physical, undeniable proof that I was not nothing. I had never been nothing at all. 2 blissful months later, my new existence had fallen into a beautiful, predictable rhythm. I woke up at 5 a.m. every single morning, watching the neon California sun bleed over the Pacific Ocean from my bedroom window. I would casually stroll downstairs and unlock the ceramic cup by 6 a.m. I worked the morning shift until noon, pouring dark roast coffee, engaging in breezy banter with the regulars, and slowly memorizing the names of the locals who now fondly referred to me as Ruth's niece, the famous photographer. My afternoons were entirely dedicated to my empire. I had officially signed a lease on a tiny, sun-drenched studio space located just 3 blocks away from the cafe. It was just large enough to house my massive editing computer and a high-end printing station. My debut exhibition had officially closed, but Marcus was already aggressively mapping out my second solo show scheduled for the upcoming spring. We titled the new series Thresholds. It was a collection of photographs documenting harsh edges, literal boundaries, and the agonizing, liminal spaces between belonging to a group and standing entirely alone. It felt incredibly fitting. The highly anticipated magazine article hit the newsstands in October. There was my face, plastered on the glossy cover of Santa Barbara magazine, right next to the bold headline, "The artist who finally learned to see herself." The article laid out my entire traumatic journey, heavily edited by the legal department, of course, with specific names altered to protect the guilty from defamation lawsuits. But the bleeding core of the truth remained entirely intact. The agonizing invisibility, the psychological breaking point, and the terrifying choice to jump. The public response was overwhelming. Complete strangers began flooding my inbox. They were women who had functioned as their family's unpaid pack mule, the reliable siblings, the forgotten daughters who everyone always forgot to thank. Their desperate, emotional messages filled my screen like a massive choir of validation. I honestly believed I was the only one living this nightmare. Your story gave me the strength to finally pack my bags and run. Thank you for proving to me that survival is actually possible. My biological family eventually reached out as well. Natalie sent a brief text message shortly after her fourth baby was born, a little girl named Charlotte. She attached a hospital photo. I politely texted back my congratulations and mailed a generous digital gift card to her email. I did not offer a single word more. My mother aggressively called my cell phone exactly one time. I watched her name flash on the screen and let it ring through to voicemail. She left a furious, condescending audio message demanding to know if I had gotten this ridiculous tantrum out of my system yet. I deleted the file without finishing it. But my father actually managed to shock me. His brief email hit my inbox on a random Tuesday night. It consisted of exactly 3 sentences. "Delilah, I saw your face on the magazine cover. I am incredibly proud of you." That specific email I decided to keep. Today, I am sitting quietly in my private studio, staring out the massive window at the crashing Pacific waves. The battered $220 Canon camera I purchased from that dusty Boston pawn shop is proudly displayed on a floating shelf above my desk. It looks incredibly old now, heavily scuffed and beaten, but it still functions perfectly. Resting right next to it is a brand new, astronomically expensive professional camera, a rig I purchased outright using the cash I generated entirely from my own art. Both of these machines hold immense emotional weight. The cheap camera served as a desperate reminder to finally see the world. The expensive camera serves as undeniable proof that the world finally saw me back. My sophomore exhibition officially launches next month. Thresholds. 15 brand new, massive photographs, each one aggressively exploring the bleeding edges of human connection, exploring the exact coordinates where a toxic family ends and an independent self begins, documenting the horrific spaces where familial obligation mutates into vicious exploitation and where conditional love violently morphs into something entirely unrecognizable. I honestly believe it is going to be my ultimate masterpiece. Aunt Ruth still drops by my studio every single morning, bringing me a fresh latte and her legendary sarcastic commentary. Marcus calls my cell phone on a weekly basis, excitedly delivering updates regarding wealthy collectors and lucrative gallery opportunities. The loyal regulars down at the Ceramic Cup have actually started requesting to sit at the photographer's table by the front window, where I occasionally sit and edit raw files between customers. I am absolutely not a millionaire. I am not a global celebrity. But I am finally seen, and that is infinitely more than enough. As for my biological family, we currently exist in a highly sanitized, heavily regulated new configuration. We exchange generic Christmas cards, obligatory birthday texts, and receive occasional, sterile updates regarding the rapidly growing nieces and nephews. Our dynamic is incredibly civil, vastly distant, and infinitely healthier than the nightmare we occupied before. I have not stepped foot back in the state of Massachusetts. Perhaps someday I will return to Boston, but it will strictly be as a high-profile visitor staying in a luxury hotel. I will never, ever return as the hired help. Just the other afternoon, I was digging through a hard drive of my oldest digital files and stumbled across a photograph I had snapped years ago. It was a blurry self-portrait, shot in the dirty bathroom mirror of my depressing Boston apartment, back when I was still completely invisible to the world. The pathetic woman staring back at me in that photo looked utterly exhausted. She looked deeply, fundamentally defeated, as if she were desperately waiting for someone else to grant her permission to simply exist. I dragged the file to the trash bin and hit delete. That pathetic, subservient woman is completely dead now. Standing in her place is a powerful artist who violently demands to take up space. A woman who creates breathtakingly beautiful things. A woman who confidently says no when she means no and says yes only when she actively chooses to. A woman who finally permitted herself to be seen. And that is the absolute, unvarnished truth of my story. It is not a tale of malicious revenge. It is not a story of arrogant triumph. It is simply a story about securing your freedom. If we examine Delilah's horrific journey through a clinical, psychological lens, her childhood is a textbook illustration of a toxic phenomenon known as parentification. This occurs when a child, frequently the oldest daughter, is violently forced to shoulder massive adult responsibilities without receiving an ounce of recognition, emotional support, or reciprocity. Delilah was also forced into the devastating role of the family scapegoat, the designated punching bag whose basic human needs are relentlessly deprioritized, while the golden child, Natalie, is showered with endless resources, praise, and attention. Here is the absolute core message I want you to internalize from this story. Establishing ironclad boundaries is not an act of betrayal. Refusing to be abused is not abandonment. It is simply the healthy recognition that you cannot pour water from a completely empty cup, and that the human beings who genuinely love you will never demand that you try. If you are currently trapped in a toxic nightmare mirroring Delilah's reality, please remember this. Your fundamental value as a human being is not dictated by how useful you are to your abusers. Your worth is inherent. It was implanted in your soul the day you were born. And sometimes, the absolute bravest, most powerful move you can execute is not screaming or fighting back. It is simply packing your bags and walking away. Build a beautiful empire entirely of your own making. Let your brilliant, successful life scream infinitely louder than any desperate argument ever could. You deserve that peace. We all do.